The night began quietly, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Rain dripped from the broken gutters of an old house on Hollow Street, and inside, a young girl named Elena sat alone beside the flickering light of a single candle. Her father had been buried only hours ago, a kind man whose laughter once filled these walls, but now lived only in the echoes of her memory. The air felt heavier than ever. Grief and silence shared the same seat beside her. She hadn't spoken since the funeral. She only stared at the framed photo on the mantel, her father's smile frozen in time. The clock struck midnight, and the sound rang through the house like a heartbeat. Then the lights flickered, once, twice, gone. Darkness swallowed everything. The candle burned weakly, casting trembling shadows on the walls, and Elena felt something change in the air the same way you feel the cold hand of a storm before it breaks. She whispered her father's name under her breath, almost like a prayer. "Dad, if you're still here, give me a sign." The wind outside moaned through the broken shutters, and from the kitchen came a faint sound, a single knock. Then another, and another. She stood up slowly, her bare feet silent on the cold wooden floor. The sound grew louder, faster, like something inside the walls was trying to get out. When she opened the kitchen door, nothing was there, just the smell of wet soil and something faintly metallic. On the table lay her father's watch, the same one she had placed in his coffin earlier that morning. Her heart nearly stopped. It was impossible. She backed away, whispering, "No, no, this isn't real." But the ticking of the watch grew louder, tick, 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 echoing through the entire room like a mocking heartbeat. Then silence again. Elena grabbed her coat and ran outside into the storm, her tears mixing with the rain. The graveyard was only a short walk from her house. She could see the iron gate glinting in the distance under the pale light of the moon. When she reached it, she pushed it open, and it screamed in protest, the sound piercing the night. Rows of stones stretched out before her like jagged teeth, and in the center stood her father's fresh grave. The flowers she had left earlier were already wilted. She knelt, pressing her trembling hands against the cold dirt. "Daddy, I don't know what's happening," she sobbed. "Please, please rest." Then the wind stopped, the rain stopped. The world went silent, unnaturally silent, and she heard it, the slow crunch of footsteps behind her. She turned around, nothing, but when she looked back at the grave, the dirt had shifted. Something beneath it was moving. The ground began to pulse, cracking as if breathing, and from the cracks, black water seeped out thick, like oil. Elena screamed and stumbled backward, falling into the mud. She looked up, gasping, as the earth settled again, leaving behind only her father's photograph, clean, dry, and standing upright on the headstone. She grabbed it, shaking, and ran home through the rain that had suddenly started again, harder, faster, pounding like drums of war. When she burst through her front door, the candle was still burning, but the flame was no longer yellow. It burned a deep, unnatural blue, and the clock on the wall, it had stopped at 12:00, midnight, the hour that never ends. She locked the door behind her and leaned against it, panting. "It's just my imagination," she whispered to herself. But the house didn't agree. The air inside was colder now, every breath visible like mist. The walls began to groan softly, like old bones stretching. Upstairs, a door slammed, then another. Then footsteps, slow, dragging, heavy, moving down the hall. She knew those footsteps. They sounded exactly like her father's. "Dad," she called, her voice breaking. No answer. Just the steady creak of the staircase as someone or something started to descend. She gripped the photograph to her chest and took a step back, tears welling in her eyes. The bottom of the stairs was shrouded in shadow. The light from the candle barely reached it. The footsteps stopped. Then, from the darkness, a figure appeared, tall, motionless, and dripping wet. His face was hidden in the dark, but his hand was visible, pale, shaking, clutching something small. The watch, her father's watch. Elena's knees gave way. "Dad," she whispered, The figure tilted its head, as if remembering a word it hadn't heard in a long time. Then it stepped into the light. What she saw wasn't her father. It was something that used to be him, eyes hollow, skin gray and cracked, lips trembling without words. He opened his mouth slowly, and the sound that came out wasn't human, a distorted echo of his old voice, overlapping with whispers that came from the walls themselves. "You shouldn't have come," it rasped. Elena screamed and dropped the photograph. It hit the floor and shattered, the glass slicing her palm. The ghost, or whatever it was, began moving toward her, slow and deliberate. She stumbled backward, tripping over the rug, crawling until her back hit the wall. The temperature dropped so fast that frost formed on the window pane beside her. She could see her breath short, panicked gasps of white mist. The shadow loomed over her, and in the reflection of the broken frame, she saw a dozen other faces behind it, all pale, all dead, all watching her. The lights exploded, plunging the house into total darkness. She screamed again, scrambling for her phone, using its flashlight to cut through the black. The beam shook wildly across the room and froze on a face in the corner. Not her father's this time, a woman. Black hair covering her eyes, mouth stretched into an unnatural grin. Then another face appeared behind her, and another. The entire room was filling with them, bodies twisted at impossible angles, crawling, whispering her name. She dropped the phone, the light spinning across the floor as they crept closer. "Go away," she cried. The whispers turned to laughter, dry, broken laughter that echoed through the walls. She ran upstairs, slamming the bedroom door and locking it, pressing her back against it as she sobbed. The doorknob started to rattle violently. Something pounded on the other side once, twice, harder each time. "Go away." She screamed again, but the pounding only grew louder. Then silence. She waited, trembling. The silence lasted too long. She slowly turned her head and froze. The window was open, flashes of light, and standing in the reflection of the mirror beside it was her father again. Only this time he was smiling. His voice came from behind her, close to her ear. "Why are you hiding, sweetheart?" She turned, nothing there, but the reflection still showed him, standing right behind her, eyes black as coal. His hands reached for her shoulders, and she felt the touch, ice, cold, real. She screamed, spinning around, swinging wildly, knocking the mirror from the wall. It shattered into 1,000 pieces, and for a moment she saw hundreds of reflections of him, all moving, all smiling, all wrong. She stumbled to the corner of the room, covering her ears, whispering, "Stop, stop, please stop." But the house was alive now. The floorboards heaved like something crawling beneath them. The lights flickered back on for just 1 second, long enough for her to see all the ghosts standing around her bed, staring. Then they went out again. Her phone buzzed suddenly on the floor, its dim light illuminating a message. It was from her own number. It said, "Come back to the graveyard." Her hands trembled as she picked it up. She didn't want to go, but something inside, maybe grief, maybe madness, told her she had to. She ran downstairs and out into the rain again, barefoot, clutching the phone. The storm was worse now. Trees bent under the wind, thunder crashing like cannon fire. She reached the graveyard gate, pushed it open, and stepped inside. This time, the graves were all open, empty. The soil churned like boiling water, and from every grave, faint whispers rose, whispering her name. "Elena, stay, join us." She backed away, shaking her head, crying, "No, I don't belong here." The ground split, and her father's coffin rose slightly from the earth, its lid cracking open. Inside wasn't a body but a mirror, a full-length mirror, glistening under the rain. She approached it slowly, drawn against her will. Her reflection looked back, but it wasn't crying. It was smiling. The reflection raised its hand before she did. Then it whispered, "You're already dead." Lightning flashed and her reflection reached out from the glass, grabbing her wrist. She screamed and pulled back, falling onto the wet ground. The mirror shattered into mist that twisted upward into a figure, her father again, but now surrounded by the other ghosts. They circled her slowly, whispering, chanting. Her ears rang with the sound of 100 overlapping voices. She crawled backward, toward the gate, and screamed as the spirits lunged forward, but just before they reached her, the church bell rang in the distance. 1 strike, 2, the ghosts stopped. The sound of the bell rolled across the graveyard, and like smoke in the wind they faded. Her father was the last to vanish, mouthing a single word before disappearing completely, "Goodbye." Elena ran home once more, drenched, shivering, and gasping for air. The candle was still burning blue when she stepped inside, but now the flame flickered softer, slower, as if the house itself had exhaled. She locked every door, every window, and sat in the corner, hugging her knees. The silence returned, but it wasn't comforting. It was the kind of silence that watches you, the kind that listens. Hours passed. The clock, still stuck at midnight, finally ticked once 12:01. She smiled weakly through her tears. Maybe it was over. Maybe the nightmare had ended. She took a deep breath and stood, walking toward her bedroom, but as she passed the hallway mirror, she froze. The reflection didn't move. It stood perfectly still, head tilted, eyes wide. Then it smiled and whispered softly, "See you soon."